Hello, everybody, and welcome to the March 22nd, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. Let's get started with some announcements. First announcement is Code Freeze is next week. That's next Tuesday, PST, or I think early morning Wednesday, GMT. So let's work to try and get everything merged that we want. We'll talk about some of the other open issues later on in the agenda. Next announcement, GMSA Key Vault CCG plugin open sourced. James, did you want to, I think you edited this. Did you want to comment on this? If not, I can.
Yeah, so anybody who's been following along with the GMSA side of things, there's a new API in Windows that allows you to authenticate with domain, Active Directory domain without having to join the host to the domain. And this is it's a plugin model, and so this is an example of how to do that. This is being used in AKS today. It's if you've gone through like AKS's Key Vault and GMSA steps, you'll end up using this. Yeah, so the team has open sourced it. I think it has a lot of valuable ways of how to install it, how to interact with the API, how to store things in external resources, and then authenticate against those things. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of questions over the last 6 months or so about how to do this. So you can go check this out and give us feedback, as well as see how to make this work for yourself. I do have a PR into Image Builder that is installing this into the Windows nodes. I just posted it into the Teams, into the chat there. And then I also have a PR that I should be opening up in the next day or two that implements this in Cluster API for Azure so that we can run the end-to-end tests using it. And that's actually one of my next topics to talk about. So,
yeah, folks in the past might have heard reference to a GMSA v2. I think that's what this was. It's that credential guard or container credential guard plugin. Previously, there was updates to the Microsoft Docs on how to specify it in your the GMSA credential spec, but there was no reference of how to actually configure and install, or how to write and configure the plugins. So it was kind of quite a journey, but we've got some of that we've got that information open sourced for people too. So take a look if you're interested.
And we also updated the webhook to be able to support those extra fields as well a few months ago. Mark, did that work?
Yeah, so that works in, I think, the GMSA admission webhook version 0.3.0 and later should have that.
That's awesome.
Can check. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to reach out on SIG Windows if anybody has questions or ping folks here. Does anybody else have any announcements before we move on to the agenda? Okay, next is we'll leave a little bit of space for each meeting if there's any new contributors that would like to introduce themselves or ask questions or say what they're working on or looking for things to work on. So I'll open the floor for that right now. If there's anybody new who wants to say anything, just raise your hand or just jump on in. Okay, I don't see anybody, or I see a couple new people here today. I don't see anybody who wants to introduce themselves yet. That's all right. We can go on to the agenda. Next agenda item, James, CAPI, and GMSA tests.
Yeah.
I think that's continuation of what you were just talking about.
Yeah, so I'm working on automating this so that we can run it as part of our end-to-end suite that shows up on the test grid signal. And I've got it all working end-to-end except for this part here where our end-to-end test calls out to bash, and we're using Cluster API's framework for running the conformance tests. And it calls to bash, it uses the conformance image, and the conformance image is built on Slim, or actually a distroless image. And so it doesn't have bash, it doesn't have a bunch of different utilities in it. So I don't think we should be calling out to bash. I haven't found any other instances in tests that do this type of thing. And so I've kind of evaluated a few different ways of going about solving this problem. My current one is using AGN host and installing a couple extra tools that we do need, and then calling that script from there. I did a prototype this morning on making that work. But if anybody has any ideas or thoughts, or totally open to discussing them.
James, I have one question. What job's breaking?
The serial slow job.
The GMSA full job here.
Oh,
right.
That test and the job itself is the serial slow that we have for CAPC.
For the CAPC, okay.
Yeah. And that's because I put a link in there. If you look at like cluster API, it's that top link. The way they're doing this is they're using the conformance image to run the EDE binary, and that conformance image doesn't have it's distroless, so it doesn't have anything in it except for kubetest, kubectl, and a binary to run the conformance test.
So James, to be clear, like you said, this is for the CAPZ tests that we have, right? The AKS engine tests are not impacted by this, right? We're using a different image.
Yeah, we run EDE test binary directly on Kubekins, and so Kubekins has all those tools installed, and so it's not an issue. Yep.
Okay, so that's the difference here for folks. I don't think I have enough context to comment or be useful at this point. I don't know if I know Claudio has done a lot of work with SIG testing to see if we shouldn't be using, maybe to see if there's a reason, like if we shouldn't be using bash in those tests, or if they have recommendations for how to do that.
It should be fine as long as you're using the base BusyBox or agnostic images, because those are using BusyBox, which has minimal bash and bash-like commands, including cp, move, or whatever, including nc and so on and so forth. But so many things can go wrong with writing entire scripts into bash, especially since newer versions of bash have more specific syntax, which is not supported in BusyBox. So that's going to be problematic, and I have seen issues like that in the past. And of course, there are all sorts of differences between Windows and Linux, including different resources. For example, how typically on Linux you have /etc/resolve.conf. That's different on Windows. That resides in a totally different place. I think you can get that information from registries in Windows, and all those type of differences are being solved by the agnost binary in the agnost image, for example, since that is the main purpose of that image, is to reduce the differences between those two operating systems. But try to avoid anything more complicated than basic bash.
Right, yeah. What I'll do is I'll open up the PR with the prototype I did this morning, and then I think that will make it a little bit more concrete for people to give feedback on.
We're not doing anything crazy in bash, right? We're just getting, that's mainly to deploy the webhook and all of that? Exactly,
yeah. And I was able to get it to deploy using the AGN host image. And I'm using the Linux one, like deploying a pod onto the Linux machine, running that script. And so there's no obvious issues that would come up because I'm trying to run it on Windows Bash or something like that. So.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else to say about this? Should we move on? I think we'll see how it looks if you open up that PR then, James. Okay, next item. I added this, but this is kind of on behalf of Ravi's PR to promote the PodOS field to beta. I think everybody on all of the participating SIGs have said that this looks good pending seeing it run as an E2E test. I took a quick look this morning and I asked James to help look too. Didn't have enough time to actually look at it, but the test case that Ravi's adding is not showing up even in the skipped list for any of the PR jobs. So I think we'll need to keep looking at that. I think we can take this offline. Probably, yeah, to just test info related too. So I hope that we can get that sorted out later, like earlier today, to get this merged early. If you're going to be around, James, maybe Claudia, you can help look at this too.
Yeah, can you drop a link somewhere?
It's in the meeting notes. Do you want me to?
Yeah, no, I can find it then.
Okay, yeah, I before this meeting, I checked out the PR branch and then the meeting started, so I didn't get to that. Next one is the logs node service log viewer PR. Is Arvind back? I think he was on PTO.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, yeah, I reviewed this. I gave an LGTM for like the Windows specific stuff, and I reviewed the kubelet changes, and they looked okay to me. I think Ryan also looked at them. It seems like some CLI reviewers had some specific feedback.
That's correct. So I think we have addressed Ryan's feedback. Mache gave us a review, I think last Thursday. So that's what Chris and I are working on. I still think we should be able to get this in. The change requests, at least from looking at them, don't seem too hard. So I'm still going to push for getting this in. The last remaining thing is the API review. I did ask for it, but other than that, I'm hoping we can push this through. Do I need to ping other people for API review, or just that adding that label API review is good enough?
Let me see. Usually, usually folks will go and I don't know when was it added. Usually the API reviewers have their own board where they'll put things into like reviewing or needs review or needs review assigned. If you don't see that, then I would ping in the API review Slack channel if you just added it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd maybe after this meeting ping folks just to make sure it's aware of that.
Okay, I can do that.
I'll also check to see if it's open that anybody can add it to at least the needs review for 124 column, probably after this meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, I'd say like once it's on the project board, I've usually seen people take a look at it, but if it's not on their project board, then I'd ping them.
All right, sounds good. So Mark, are you going to try and put it on the project board?
I'll try and put it on the project board after this meeting, and if I can't, I'll message you in Slack.
Okay, sounds good.
Did you have to do any, like, were there any substantial deviations from what was defined in the KEP for the API changes?
No, I don't think so. I think they were pretty much, what we set out to do. The only thing is, Clayton wanted something that we're adding here to be extended to pod logs, but this PR is already so big that I don't see a way to add that. So I'm going to do that as a follow-up PR. Okay. But I'm basically focusing on the node log viewer bit here. Okay,
yeah, if that's the case, and I believe this KEP had kind of more detailed API changes than some of the other KEPs too. So hopefully this API review is going to go smoothly. Thanks for all of that. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. Next set of agenda items, I was looking at the PRs that we had open and wanted to merge for 124. I think that Claudia, some of these were yours. There was some work to add more conformance tests for Windows. Are you still working? Are these just, do we just need other people to review?
Yeah, pretty much reviews. So for the most part, they're not complicated. For those who do not know, they're conformance tests, which pretty much everyone has to run, but some of them have been tagged with Linux only because they could not run in the past for Windows. Those have been reduced over time due to SIG Windows' efforts to add new features and make it more bring up the parity, to make the parity better between those two OSs. But there were still a couple of tests which were still tagged Linux only, and they became the issue why they didn't become runnable on Windows was because we had to support Docker as well, which was removed in the latest release of Kubernetes. So we don't have to worry about that anymore, since we are now pretty much supporting Containerd. And those features work on Containerd. Especially since in Containerd we have introduced a few other features as well, like host processes. Because, for example, there are some tests which require host network to be enabled, and before you could not enable host network at all. But if you're using host processes, you can have host network enabled. So that basically enabled a whole bunch of new tests to be enabled. It's pretty much split into two pull requests, I think.
I saw 3, but it actually looks like this one may be
that was split into 2 basically.
a duplicate.
It was split because someone suggested to split it so it's easier to review.
Should we close this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll either let you do that or you can close that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There
like these were that complicated.
There shouldn't be too many conformance tests which are still tagged with Linux only. But the ones that remain are pretty much strictly related to something like sysctl or stuff like that, which really are Linux specific. Yeah, including running as group IDs and so on and so on, which we do not really support.
Okay, great. So I guess, yeah, these aren't critical to get into 124 either, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Are these on anybody's project boards to take a look at? Looks like Node added them, but I thought that a lot of them were ARC tests.
I did run our CI over it. It's also in the list of jobs that have passed, so we should be fine to merge them. We won't have any issues.
Okay. Great. I checked, there's a couple of small, like kubelet related PRs that had been open for 124. A couple of them merged this morning after Murnal approved them. So I continue to watch the board for new PRs that are targeting 124 for the next week, and well, past the next week, but I'll pay more attention the next week and see if anybody has any feedback. I will give an update too now on a quick update on the status of the docs updates that we wanted to do. So I had went to the SIG docs community meeting and met with all the folks, and they were happy to have somebody show up for those. The plan right now is, originally I had wanted to target getting all these merged into the Dev 124 branch, so that when that did just get merged into the website's main branch, those changes would be live. The docs team is there. They reiterated what I saw in some of the issues, that their main focus for 124 is making sure that all of the docs are kind of reflect Docker shim deprecation. There's a lot of updates that are going on with that. Just because so much of the code, or like the documentation, was written when Docker shim was kind of the only thing. So, but they did agree that all of the changes should go in all at once. So what we've worked out is that we'll keep the PRs open at targeting the Dev 124 branch. And that's because some of the individuals from that SIG are, I think, on a weekly cadence now, but as we get closer to the release, more frequently are merging main into Dev 124 to pick up any new changes there. So the plan that we've worked out with is that after the Dev 124 branch merges and goes live, they are going to keep the Dev 124 branch open for all of the Windows docs related changes. And then we can merge those into the Dev 124 branch, use the Dev 124 branch for a short period to stabilize the Windows change, all the Windows documentation changes that we have. And then we'll do one big merge from the Dev 124 branch into the master branch again, so that the Windows changes would go live. And they said they'd be willing to do that merge as soon as all of those PRs merge into the Dev 124 branch and get reviewed. So with hopefully, within a couple of days of the 124 documentation going live on the branch. The alternative would be for me to maintain another branch and do ingest all of the changes in, or a child branch of Dev 124, and that seems like a lot of work for a couple of days delay too. So yeah, that's the update I have. I think that we'll still most of those PRs that we had open, especially the ones that were updated or splitting up that big Windows page, are up for review. I've seen people review them. It's looking pretty good. I think we still have time to do all of that work though, too. So if anybody has any questions with that or would like to contribute, let me know. Otherwise, the plan is to still merge all of those changes into Dev 124 and then move those all in. It'll just be a little bit after the initial Dev 124 payload goes into the master branch or main branch. So, does anybody else have any questions, agenda items, anything they want to discuss? Jay, did you ever settle on a time for the KPMG?
A few people reached out, and then I started a dialogue with some folks internally here in the Beijing time zone, and it was kind of an interesting thing because it sounds like some folks want to do Europe time zone, some people in Asia are interested, and I don't have a good feel yet for who's really going to be there driving it. So if anybody here really wants to help drive it with me, speak up now or just yell at me in Slack, because I've got a lot of passive agreement, which is great, which I think is enough for us to do something. But before I really start, before we really pull the trigger, I just want to see who's planning on really coming every week and what time zone they really prefer. So I'm looking for some strong opinions.
You could flip-flop too. I've seen some like the SIG docs, they have every other week, it's Pacific time, and then the off weeks they rotate between like Beijing or IDC time.
Okay.
Or India time, and then Europe time to accommodate that too. So that might be another option. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
I'm interested in attending, but I don't think I have bandwidth to help really drive this right now. But I'll be there for support whenever, as long as the times work out.
Well,
but yeah, that could be another option too. And then if either one of the meetings consistently has attendance and the other one doesn't, you can just maybe default to that one.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm up for anything. So again, it just really depends on what folks want to do and whether folks, want to help. But yeah, if you have friends that want to get involved in Kubernetes and help start a sub project or anything like that, let them know this is a good place, and we'll teach them what they need to learn. So folks, feel free to reach out to me on Slack.
Great.
But yeah, I
Alright.
didn't pull the trigger yet because of that. I was just like, okay, I want to.
Okay, sounds good. I think that concludes the community meeting, so I'll stop the recording and then we can go into pairing if we do that.